I am a 25-year-old man, and I work at a car lot. It's not very often that I get inside of a car and pretend to drive it like a kid does. And yet, here I am.
Third Hand Motors, I don't have an intro.
It's happening. It's happening. It's happening. I saw this all the way from the parking lot. No brakes, do not drive. I don't care. Stick. It's a stick!
So, you might be wondering, why am I so excited about a 20-year-old Honda? To answer that question, we have to go back a little more than 20 years ago. Imagine driving down the road without seeing a Prius. Ever. Hard to do, right? It's hard to believe, but hybrids have been on the roads in the US now for over 20 years. And this little Honda was the very first hybrid for sale in the US. That's right, this little computer mouse beat the Prius to the market by a full model year. And no, not this Prius, that Prius. That's right, 7 whole months before you could buy that Toyota Echo with a giant alternator, you could buy this. And by all means, you should have. The first generation Honda Insight was truly a purpose-built hybrid. It had only 2 seats, an extremely aerodynamic body, and went to great lengths to save weight. They didn't even add the mechanism that let you adjust the steering wheel. It was meant for one thing and one thing only, to commute while getting great mileage. The chassis, wheels, and most body panels were constructed out of aluminum as opposed to the usual steel. Though its aluminum composition only made the Insight able to carry 365 pounds of passengers and cargo total, it's also what made the Insight weigh only around 1,850 pounds. That's 350 pounds lighter than a first-generation Mazda Miata. And even though the Insight only had a 1-liter 3-cylinder engine producing 73 horsepower and 91 pound-feet of torque with the electric assist, it still manages to get an EPA-estimated 48 city and 60 highway MPG by current standards. Yes, you heard that correctly, 60 MPG in 2001. And some owners report MPG ratings in the 70 to 80 MPG range, depending on how you drive. And all of the Insight's power was sent through an enthusiastic 5-speed manual transmission from the patron saint of manual transmissions, Honda. What more could you ask for? Sadly though, most people did ask for more, and they got it, from Toyota. Looking back, the first generation Insight may have been a bit too purpose-built, as it did not sell very well. There were only around 17,000 Insights produced over a 7-year production run, spanning from the year 2000 to 2006. By comparison, the Toyota Prius sold almost 8 times that amount in 2005 alone. It's no wonder you rarely see any Insights on the road anymore. They are truly becoming cult classics. So, have I converted you to the Insight Nerd Club yet? Good. Now you know why I was so enthused to see this Insight come across the lot. I couldn't stop thinking about it all day, and so, on my lunch break, I did what all enthusiasts do when left alone with a cool car. I pretended I was a mechanic. Almost immediately, I discovered that the engine barely started.
As you can see, it doesn't want to anymore do anything.
And once it started, it would run and rev for a bit, but eventually it would sputter and die due to a vacuum leak somewhere.
Usually it works. Wow. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna turn that off.
And yes, the mysterious writing on the window was correct. There were no brakes. At all. This was due to a cut brake line underneath the car. In spite of this, I did drive the car a few feet to make sure the transmission worked. There was also a light on for the hybrid battery system, and there was no AC. And once I got up under the hood, I found 2 things. I found a lot of cobwebs, and I even found an entire Call of Duty map under there. Rust. Despite all this, I put my name in to buy it, just so no one else would. So a few days later on my next shift, I came back with a vengeance. I started off by clamping the brake booster vacuum line using vice grips. I also added some new fuel and put the car on my jump pack. And what do you know?
But now it revs smooth. Like really smooth.
Not only did the engine seem to rev healthily, but the hybrid battery appeared to come back to life as well. But it wasn't all good news. Yep, Unbeknownst to me, next to that cut brake line was also a leaking fuel line. In addition to this, 3 of the tires had slowly lost all of their air, even though they had only sat for a few days. But I did discover something very interesting about the Insight.
Here we go. You didn't hear a starter, did you? That's because the battery actually started it up.
The hybrid battery had charged up enough to start the car without using the starter. I had no idea this would happen. What's more, it felt a lot smoother than the Prius does when its engine turns over, even in this old broken Insight. At this point, I only had a day left to decide whether I would actually buy it or not. So, just for fun, I decided to go digging through the online vehicle history report a little bit. The car had spent most of its life in Illinois until about 2016, hence the rust. It seemed to have been serviced fairly regularly. It had a battery replacement in 2012, an engine replacement in 2015, a catalytic converter replacement in 2018, and then nothing. For 4 years, there wasn't a single ping on the radar until a week before MyLeod acquired this car, where it was taken to a local Honda dealer. I called the dealer up, and though they tried, they weren't able to give me any insight as to why it was there. All they could say was that the owner got an estimate, declined the services, and a week later it showed up on our lot. That was all anyone knew about this little Honda. And so it was time to decide whether I should buy it or not. And I decided... Alright, so it is time to discuss why I did not buy the Honda Insight. There are 4 main reasons, all of which are honestly good enough on their own to not have bought it. But let's start off with reason number 1, red tape. The car, in order for me to buy the car from the lot that I work at, the car would have needed to have passed a safety inspection, which if you've paid attention in the video so far, you know it would not have done. And the only way around that was to get it repaired, but I'd have to do that from an approved mechanic. And not only would it have to be from an approved mechanic, that mechanic would have to fix it properly, which on a 21-year-old one-off Honda hybrid, parts were not going to happen. The knowledge was not going to happen. It just wasn't going to happen. Reason number 2 is cost. This car would have ended up being closer to $2,000 than $1,000 to get it in my driveway in the state that it was in, even negating the first reason. And I asked a popular Insight forum, like, is it worth that much? And I got a resounding no from everyone. Number 3 is the condition. I'm not really scared to work on cars. I like working on cars. I would love to keep something like this from the junkyard. But I couldn't confirm if the transmission worked fully. That's a very common problem on these. The synchros go bad. And I couldn't also fully confirm if the car would overheat. You know, I didn't sit in it forever. My lunch break is only so long. If the brakes would work. I also didn't know if the AC would work. And the IMA battery charging, I was told this on the forums. The IMA battery charging, as you saw in the video, doesn't really mean much until you're moving, until you've had some miles under your belt. And, you know, the car did arrive with an IMA light on, so one can only assume that that was bad too. So, you know, it was a gamble, even as much as I didn't want for it to be, it was one. And reason number 4 is the age and quirkiness. So, first off, parts availability. I have literally never seen one in a junkyard, although more on that in a minute. So to get parts, you'll have to buy from fellow Insight enthusiasts who are parting out cars like this one. Honda does not support it anymore. The aftermarket is okay on like basic stuff, but I don't think, you know, there's a huge demand, so I don't think there's a huge supply either. Knowledge availability, there's only one mechanic that I know of that works on Insights in the area that I live in. I'm assuming it's very expensive. So those are the reasons I didn't buy it. I'm bummed though. You'll see why in the next segment. So sadly, I couldn't save the Insight, even though I truly did want to. Whether we like it or not, when a car gets to be this old and this rare, some must die so others can live. And, true to form, this one was put to pasture at my local junkyard the day after it sold. Thankfully, though, there is a dedicated community of enthusiasts working to keep Honda Insights on the road, and this insight is already being used to keep automotive history alive. With hybrids and EVs everywhere in the US nowadays, it's hard to believe that it all started with this little Honda. Even though it was ultimately beaten by the Prius, it was so interesting to see what a hybrid could be if it focused on innovation rather than sales figures. A car this well engineered, purpose-built, and absolutely uncompromising may never be built again, but I hope you enjoyed learning about it nonetheless. And thank you so much for watching.